Okay, look, one of the issues that we thought was finished in 1992, a key issue, it was a question about Joe Doherty. And what that was, it was something much broader than that. It was about the whole issue with people who were involved years before in the conflict in Ireland. Were they involved in a political conflict where they shouldn't be treated as common criminals because it suited the British to brand them like that? And we had people at that time in this country, like Brian Pearson, like Gabe McGahey, like Matt Morrison and others, who were fighting against deportation. They were married to American citizen wives, had American citizen children, and the country was trying to put them out, not because of any real reason, but because the British wanted to label anybody who was against them as a criminal. They think that's important. They wanted America to endorse that, okay? And we thought that it was resolved. We thought we got, again, as a result of that forum, President Clinton, Janet Reno, Marion, Andy Moldway, resolved it. But they didn't resolve it at the time that that resolution went through. They said that others too would be resolved, that the door was now open, that it was going to be open for other people who were in the same position, former political prisoners, who had now become important parts of our and respected members of our community. And today, our next speaker is somebody who fits into that category, who's found that he hasn't been able to get the justice that we all thought had been opened by President Clinton's promise, by Janet Reno's action, by Madeleine Albright's recommendation. Right now, his partner, one of his children, is back in Tyrone. Can't work, can't take a long job because of the fact that every few months that threat of deportation stands over. He was somebody whose house was fired on. Someone will go to trial, Winky Ray, for trying to assassinate him with the help and at the direction of the British. He's somebody who's respected by Cardinal Dolan, by Peter King, by Republican congressmen, Democratic congressmen, Senator Schumer, Elliot Engel, everybody. Somebody that belongs in the United States, that the British should never be able to use America to brand them as a criminal and then send them out. And we wanted him to come and say, because people think, oh, he got another 6-month stay, that means everything is over, everything is great. We wanted him to talk about how important how precarious his situation is, what he is going through today, and more important, what we can do to make sure that he stays here, not just 6 months at a time, but for good and forever, that justice is done for Malachi McAllister.
Thank you. I note John Derry wasn't wearing glasses, and he's a bit older than me, I think, isn't he? Where is he? Right? But look, I looked up to John Derry, always did have, literally, he's a big guy, but a true leader in the Irish community for sure. And he does certainly hold most of these candidates for presidency and to the values of our country. And who supports peace and justice in Ireland. And when I came here in '96, there were a few around. Unfortunately, are not here today. Paul O'Dwyer, the great Frank Durgan, and many others who were real champions of human rights and civil rights throughout the world. So it's not your imagination. I'm still here. But the important thing is that really we're listening to John tonight. Voting is crucial in these elections. This was something that probably taken for granted, but not taken for granted where I came from. Back in those days, civil rights, we were campaigning from the early 60s, and we didn't have those rights to vote. And if you're on the other side, you had 2 votes if you had a business. And, we talk about gerrymandering, that was ripe obviously back there at that time. But, especially, what I consider to be, look, the president now, and if we go back to the first president, George Washington, he fought as I did, obviously, for freedom from British rule. He had that determination, the resilience. He didn't win all the battles, but he continued to fight away until he reached the goal in getting Britain out of this country and freeing people and allowing them to have the democracy as we have today. He won one great battle, as I was told, not far from a friend of mine, actually Sean Pender, in Trenton, Ontario. That was one of the big battles he won. And Sean has been fighting alongside with me in my battle for all these years, And certainly many of you here tonight, of course the AOH, I wouldn't be here today without all my friends and brothers here. Their support has been absolutely terrific, especially in the last several months. So I wish everybody well. I know we're coming up to the convention in Orlando, and I hope, fingers crossed, I can be there. So, but as far as the support that I've been receiving, it's just been overwhelming. I can't tell you how much I appreciate what each and every one has done for me here. And I note Ray O'Hanlon, Adrian Flannery here tonight. What fantastic people, and what support you've given me over the years. So, I mean to say, George Washington died, unfortunately, of an ailment that probably could have been resolved today. But his admiration and his resilience that the Brits have today for him, and I hope at some point they'll acknowledge me and say enough's enough, let it go, But likewise, we have to continue to show that resilience and determination today in our search for truth and justice and continued peace in Ireland, although Brexit will certainly test us. So where am I today? I certainly thought I would have been deported the day after Thanksgiving. But the President finally got to read his sister's remarks. Judge Marianne Trump Barry, Third Circuit Court of Appeals, who I appeared before in 2006. Aside from that, it was divine invention, I think, Cardinal Dolan came on the scene and done a terrific job. And it was his urge, his involvement really, that urged the President to read his sister's remarks. And I think it's very important, and it's not a segue as what we're talking about tonight, you know what I mean, that we realise how much some people think of our country, our history, and our culture. And I want to read out what Marianne Trump Barry said, because I think that's very important. We all acknowledge that, especially coming from a federal judge. And I quote Marianne Trump Barry, it's not verbatim, but it's nearly everything. I refuse to believe that give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free is now an empty entity. But if it is, shame on us. I concede I cannot find a way to keep the McAllisters in this country. And I have surely tried. But the laws Congress has enacted, particularly those enacted in the wake of September 11th, are bulletproof to combat terrorism. The problem here is that Congress's definition of terrorist activity sweeps in not only the big guy, but also the little guy who poses no risk to anyone. It sweeps in me. Malachy's children, Sean and Nicola, are swept in too, albeit in a different way, as victims because their mother Bernadette died of cancer a mere 6 weeks after being diagnosed. and her successful asylum application, on which they all depended, became moot. The judge had granted asylum to Bernadette and her children in a 65-page opinion issued after 12 trial days, during which he heard 16 witnesses. One of the most impressive opinions I have read in my years on the federal bench. He found such overwhelming evidence of severe past persecution suffered by Bernadette because of her religion, her political opinion, and because she was my wife, that without more, she and her children should not be deported. But in a mere 4-page response, the Board of Immigration Appeals threw out the asylum grant, concluding with no discussion that no event or combination of events rose to the level of past persecution. Regardless, there was little chance of future persecution in the United Kingdom. I simply cannot understand that. How the board can have given such short shift to the immigration judge's extensive compilation of discussion of the innumerable acts of persecution, including the most striking and blatant act that occurred on Sunday evening in 1988, when 12-year-old Gary, 2-year-old Nicola, and 1-year-old Sean and their grandmother survived 26 shots fired into the home by masked gunmen intending to kill the entire family. Nevertheless, because the children had to file for individual applications upon their mother's death, applications that were filed too late, this court has no power to stop their return to a country they left when they were little more than babies. Malachi, a nationalist Catholic, has been branded guilty of terrorist activity. Those were terrible days which saw, among other horrors, rioting, bombing, and the harassment of Catholic children playing and walking to school. It was a time of violent political conflict, but that was then. No one now suggests that Malachi poses a threat to anyone, much less our national security, but this is a fact that Congress does not permit us to consider. Worse yet, we are prohibited from considering not only the man Malachi is today, but the circumstances surrounding his conviction 25 years ago. 800 years of history that led him to fight with his people to remove British rule, and the persecution inflicted by that rule on Northern Ireland and on my family. The troubles touch each of the McAllisters' lives. In what ways and how deep, we cannot inquire. We cannot be the country we should be if, because of tragic events of September 11, we knee-jerk and remove decent men and women merely because they may have erred at one point in their lives. We should look a little closer. We should care a little more. I would ask, no, I would implore the Attorney General to exercise his discretion and permit this deserving family to stay. That was Judge Barry's remarks in 2006. However, since then, as you know, British media has wrote about me so many times that I'm a terrorist. Sure, I've been convicted, but I was convicted in the Diplock court on the word of a paid informer. My friends, this is all about recrimination. The Brits can't let it go because they can't tell the truth. They don't want the world to know the truth. And the truth is, my family and I are the victims of terrorism. By the British government. collusion between loyalist paramilitaries and British intelligence agent Brian Nelson. It was Brian Nelson that provided the weapons in the attack in my home. The same weapons that came smuggled in from South Africa and distributed among loyalist paramilitaries to kill innocent Catholics. He was working undercover at the time in Belfast. And believe it or not, he was working undercover as a taxi driver. And his taxi was the taxi that was used in the attack in my home. The British government has covered this up for 32 years. Not my attack, but all the attacks that they've been involved in and the atrocities that they've committed in Ireland. Today, believe it or not, there is a person charged with my attempted murder. Former loyalist leader of the Red Hand Commandos, Winston Churchill Ray. He's also charged in the murder of 2 innocent Catholics, going back to 1988. And he confessed to that murder, believe it or not. He confessed that murder in the Baldwin College archives tapes. So this is not something, it's a reality. This all came to light through, as Martin mentioned earlier, Relatives for Justice. That's what we're here for tonight, to support them. Mark Thompson, who has initially reached out to me in 2012 to inform me all about the investigation and what he had discovered. And since we have learned through the report into the murder of Pat Finucane that was carried out previous to the attack in my home by Sir Desmond de Silva. So all this has transpired and throughout the years, and you know, but to be perfectly honest with you, I was resigned. The day after Thanksgiving, I thought I was gone. I closed up my business, laid off my employees, sold my house, took our son out of school. So for me, it's history repeating itself. I had to do the same thing in Belfast. I had to do the same thing in Canada. I said goodbye to all my friends, to my older children, to my 6 grandchildren, thinking that was it. And on Thanksgiving Day, I said goodbye to my partner and my youngest son. Saying that I'd see them probably on Saturday. And lo and behold, a call came through from my lawyer, Diane George, as many as you know, who's been working beside me. She's not only a great friend, but she has been instrumental in keeping me here for all these years. But on the other side of this, you know, when you break it all down, it's really, it's an upheaval. You know, for example, you know, this mightn't sound anyway important, but technically our dogs was even deported. Think about it. We had 2 wee shih tzus and we spent, you know, so they're back in Ireland now and they're wondering, saying, what the fuck am I doing here? So I'm here and, you know, listen, I'm making the best of it. Obviously I was homeless the next day, believe it or not. I really truly believed my time was up. But, you know, never say never, but, you know, this time around I thought I can, you know, we have done everything. And I know people here, like Bob Nolan and so many others, had reached out and done what they could. and with the expectation this would be turned around. I just felt that it was over and that was done, so my time here, it's time to take it to the next level. And but little did I know there was discussions going on, and this made an impact. The reality was that what happened in 2006 when I appeared before Judge Marianne Trump-Barry made a difference all these years later. So, you know, when it comes down to congressional leaders, and I've had so many support over the years in critical times, Joe Crowley, Senator Menendez, Senator Schumer, Elliot Engel, Chris Smith, bipartisan support who've supported me and stayed with me. And I think that's a testament not only to me, but all the support that has come along with me. All the AOH and all my friends that are out there have supported me from day one. But there is change. There is change when we talk about electing presidents, when we talk about what goes on in DC now. And the reality is that change has impacted Irish America, and we need to change that. We need to re-educate congressional leaders. We need them to understand. We went there one day to speak with a member of Congress, myself, Don Dannegy, Sean, several others. They didn't know about the history of Ireland. They didn't know about the Good Friday Agreement. And they didn't care about Brexit. So it's up to us to get back on that track again. And this can be done through the likes of people who've been around for years. John Deary, Adrian Flannery, Ray O'Hanlon. Re-educate our people. Let them know what our struggle has all been about. Give them something to fight for. Our people in Ireland still needs our help. And it's critical that we support the likes of Relatives for Justice. They are the voice of people who have been murdered at the hands of the British Crown Forces, who do not know to this day why their loved ones were assassinated or murdered in the way they were. So it's critical that we reach out and give support to Relatives for Justice and what they do for their loved ones. So let us continue to stand up for the people in Northern Ireland. Let us show the resilience and determination that George Washington showed against British rule. Support Relatives for Justice and the families who have suffered and are still suffering today. And let us be their voice. And I will continue, and hopefully I'll be able to bring my partner back, my son back, and my dogs back. And look, listen, it's certainly not easy, but there's always someone somewhere worse off. And look, I take this in my stride a lot of times. I know there's some people around me who are struggling as much as me, and I know there's families out there that don't know what tomorrow brings. I know there's been a lot of Republicans here who have fought over the years to stay here, just to have a life and a family. We don't want that taken away from anyone. And I think we have to, and I think we have to end that for their sake. There's no reason why today we have 21 years of the Good Friday Agreement past us. Let us not just break that down. Let us move forward to everlasting peace for each and every one of us, not just in the north, but over here. Our families deserve to have some kind of future. So I want to thank you all for listening. I appreciate your support, as I always have. If there's any questions, fire them up here. Martin will answer every one of them.
Okay, those are the things we stand for, working politically to get our Irish issues in front of American presidents as well as Congress, and to fight for people like Malachi McAllister, to fight for justice in the north of Ireland. This is the Freedom for All Ireland of New York State Committee. This is our contribution to the Christmas appeal. This year it's been designated for Relatives for Justice, the group headed by Mark Thompson, which fights for justice of the families like those of the Bronx resident, my close friend Liam Ryan, like the Ballymurphy families, like all of the families who have seen their family members killed by British forces and never gotten justice. So today, the Agent Order of Hibernians, dedicated as we are to Freedom for All Ireland, work politically as we're doing tonight. We work in terms of building awareness of the issues as we're doing tonight, and we're raising money to give to the families who desperately need it, to the groups that desperately need it, starting with Relatives for Justice tonight. Now with this event, we have one big problem. I can't think of anybody here looking around who should not be introduced as a dignitary. First, on national officers, we have the current treasurer, next vice president, a past chairman of Freedom for All Ireland, and we're all hoping one day to be a future president of the AOH and to be leading the issue for Freedom for All Ireland from that position, Sean Pender. And the person, of course, who holds the real power, who will never ever be replaced, who no one will ever run against him, the National Secretary, Jerry Cole. We have our PEC director, somebody in anti-defamation, somebody who was a great spokesman for the organization, Neil Cosgrove. The past national president, a member of the National Freedom for All Ireland Committee, somebody whose main job is he has to keep me in line all the time, and not many people can do that, but Brendan does it. Brendan Moore. And also a national officer, the person in charge of immigration, although his wife, Siobhan Dennehy, really tells him what to do on that all the time. But the person in charge does a great job. I'm teasing because he's my friend. The person who does a great job on immigration, a national director, Dan Dennehy. State officers. We have the state vice president, and again, a leader on Freedom for All Ireland within this state, makes New York one of the top state in the country for the AOH, John Manning. And the man you introduced me, the person who's the treasurer, the person who has been involved with the St. Patrick's Day Parade, with the AOH, with so many organizations in the Irish community, I couldn't begin to list all his titles, Tommy Byrne. And of course, the national officer, she was too shy to come up and sit here. But we're hoping she, as president someday, is going to continue the work she does for Freedom for All Ireland. And that's Karen Key. We have a past state director of the Ladies AOH, Dolores Dash. And up here, the current Freedom for All Ireland director for the Ladies AOH. And that's Joan Moore, not Eileen Moore. Got a couple of journalists I'm going to introduce, and then we're going to get to our first speaker. And you can't be first on the introduction. Again, somebody who is now the Dean of Irish American Journalists. He's here tonight. He was actually a panelist on the first, the historic 1992 Irish American Presidential Forum, and that is Ray O'Hanlon from the Irish Echo. And if there's a Dean of print journalists, there's a Dean of radio journalists, and that, of course, is Adrian Flannery, who's here. And as somebody who a little while worked in radio, I know the producer is actually the person who is responsible for everything that goes right in the program, and that's certainly true about Anya Sheridan, who's here. We have from the Irish Examiner, a person who gave us a full-page ad to support us and help to bring you, Patty McCarthy. We have somebody from the Sunday Times. Is it the London Sunday Times?
Sunday.
I'm just laughing. The last time they did a story about me, I had put up bail for somebody named Liam Ryan, and it was unsecured bail. You just had to sign a paper. And they did a paper thing about Martin Galvin stood up and took $750,000 out and put it on the table in front of the clerk to get the guy bailed out. I couldn't have, I was looking at Subway fare home, but that's it. But this gentleman, the Sunday Times, is a much more reputable paper now. It's a classic paper there, and he's welcome here tonight and to cover it, and I know he'll do a better job than they did so many years ago when there was, the conflict was going on, and that's Tommy Walters, and I hope you don't resent my sense of humor. We have a great old gentleman who's been involved with Irish cable TV programs, and that is Larry McAvoy. And he had videotaping is right in front of me. Somebody's been doing that on Irish programs for many years, and he's the one who's going to make sure you can see yourself on YouTube. Ed Briotti. Okay, we are going to have more introductions. If I left you out so far, that doesn't mean we're not going to get to you later. Oh, do want to mention somebody from the Brehon Law Society, Jim Cleary. Okay, we have the chairman of the Knights of St. Patrick, a great supporter of the Emerald Isle, John Tully. Not sure if I mentioned him, but if I didn't, I'll mention him again because his name bears repeating. The former state chairman of the New York FFAI, Kieran Garrity. Kings County President, Eddie Valensky. The Vice President, Mark Riley. And we have a past president from Kings County named Jerry. What's the last name? What? He's so friendly with everybody, nobody ever uses his last name. What can I say? Okay. We have the New York State District 5 Director, Steve Kiernan. The State Director of Catholic Action, Jamie Hamilton. State Finances, Brian Kelly. We have the District 4 Director, past Bronx County President, Bob Nolan. And of course, at the door, one of the members of the National Freedom for All Ireland Committee, also the guy who keeps the books, teaching me accounting and things, how I can get a list. That's Bob Bobek.
Bob Bobek.
And I just want to...
Walter Cooper, Pass County.
Oh.
Pass State District.
My friend Walter Cooper from Queens, past county president, a key figure in Freedom for All Ireland. And somebody I worked very closely with in Irish Northern Aid for many years, Michael Shanley. And just a couple more introductions. We're going to do the 50-50 raffle in a few minutes. I do want to acknowledge, before she bends over and looks into her purse, as she did at the Bronx County dinner, Leslie Cassidy from the Irish American Unity Conference. This is part of the AOH Christmas appeal. The monies go to a number of different charities that the AOH supports. This is for New York's contribution. New York's contribution goes to Relatives for Justice, but we'd ask people around the state, others in the AOH, to remember that, to support the Christmas appeal. A couple of other introductions. I'm told there is somebody here, Patty McCarty from the Court Examiner. Is that right? And we're very happy he'll be able to write about this story rather than write about how Tom Barry and Terrence McSweeney and Thomas McCurtain and so many others are turning over in their graves about a commemoration for the RIC and the Black and Tans on Friday. Okay, with the Pipers. Pipers who usually play for us and not tonight, but are here with us. Bob Lynch, Robert Lynch from Tyrone. Dermot Moore from Rockland County, AOH. Yuo Lunny called me last night. He's ill, but he, Maureen, Norman, the whole staff at O'Lunny's does a great job, and we always want to applaud them.